Yeah.
Long time. I'm a huge fan. I got Zaps galore in my account. But Zapier recently introduced a new feature which is still in beta and not available to all account users yet. But it's called Paths. And it's amazing. It has made possible some crazy workflows that I couldn't do before. It's allowing for basically conditional statements that allow you to trigger different paths, which can even have nested paths within them. So in my case, I'm taking in form submissions, and based on a series of checkboxes, I'm able to say if the user selects any of these checkboxes, they go down this path in the Zap, and there are even nested paths, and see if it's available to you. You have anything cool to share lately, Tyler?
Well, it's a little bit not related to WordPress or And I was talking to my friend's sibling about it. They didn't even know what it was.
What?
Yeah.
Correction.
Sure. And we in the rigidness of, just big business school, like kind of just cranking out degrees. And like I went to a big school. There's like 30,000 people there.
Sure.
And I really didn't like it. I didn't like the rigidness of the infrastructure, and there wasn't much freedom. So I said, hey, instead of being miserable, I'm going to go do my own thing. And at this time, I was living in a house with our boss, Pippin Williamson, actually.
He's our boss now.
Who is
Wasn't
our
at the time.
Yeah, our boss now. And his twin brother, John, over there starting was filled with technology. We had about 15 monitors in this room.
Oh my gosh.
Each one of us had a minimum of 3 monitors. Pippin, I think, might have had 5 or 6 by himself. Yeah, he had a Mac Mini that was so old all the time, and that was one of our monitors, designated clock there, and that sat above his desk, which was kind of behind me and to my right. His twin brother had boom mics and tons of giant monitors, and he was doing a lot of recording for 3-dimensional education within the Blender community.
Right.
And he has a company called CG Cookie, which specializes in the education aspect and courses and curriculums that are available for individuals and universities and everything else.
Sure.
So he was building the foundations of that. He had already stopped private work, pretty much, contract work. And I was in there, a desk full of smoldering and burnt up prototypes or things that had caught on fire, and all I did was dump water on them, or just
goodness.
random things, carvings and
I wish I could have
everywhere.
Seen what this looked like.
I'm sure I have pictures. I'll show you sometime. And develop that kind of feeling. So there's a lot of camaraderie, and all of us agree to this day that that house was probably one of the most important years of our lives, to be there and to identify who we are individually and understand ourselves and really start pushing us to the next level.
I can imagine.
So it was an incredibly productive year. It was almost a magical year, because in retrospect, we're like, man, I really like where I live now. It's like a grown-up's house. I have grown-up things. Like, I care about things like dishwashers and ovens, and I'm like trying to pay attention to cleaning equipment and utensils. Like, by the time you start knowing to uh, start publishing tutorials on making plugins,
Right.
building plugins,
Mhm.
and I think he had a couple small ones. I know he had something like people could upload pictures onto something, like if they were a member on a site, and he's like, here's how you upload. People can upload pictures, and that was like his big thing at the time. Like he like, I made money this week. I made $7 today, and we're like, and Jonathan and I were like, okay, cool. I mean, none of us metal and magnets and 3D printed parts and
Yeah.
just like
Wow.
shavings of random materials and so we couldn't ignore each other and Jonathan was so often recording tutorials and lessons on um on his educational platform that I couldn't not know what he was doing because he was over there speaking eloquently into the microphone and here I was trying not to break things. Want to sound too pushy in terms of buy this, buy this, buy this. We're really good at this. I told you should have bought it. No one wants to listen to that.
Right.
So lately I've been trying to incorporate a little more entertainment into it.
Oh, cool.
Doing little uh micro interviews of like 4 or 5 questions at a time within a player within our market or even a teammate, and eventually I'd like to get to some prominent customers and or people who feel like it's helping them a great deal. And I like to keep it fun, so like half of my questions aren't even related to the product or the business. It's like tell me about your dog, you know? And I kind of geared towards that's the most important question. Just the challenge, but I think it's the application of it that I find much more interesting. And the work is much more rewarding in a different way. So
Yeah.
um, keeps us all busy. Keeps us all busy for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
When you joined the team,
Yes.
Pippin was the only one who knew you personally,
Yeah.
I think.
The only one.
And
Yeah.
he said, I've got this friend Tyler. He's a smart guy. I think he can help us out in these areas. So we brought you in, and you had to learn a lot in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah.
Catch up on like what our products do, what
Yes.
problems we solve for our customers,
Very much
who's
so.
doing what on this team,
Hmm.
what the challenges and opportunities for us are, how to even use a lot of the technology that we rely on.
Yeah.
And just watching, you picked so much up so fast and became very uh, valuable in such a short amount of time. How'd you do this? How'd you figure this stuff out in such a short amount of time? What were your primary resources and tactics for like learning under fire?
Um, so well, thank you first off for thinking of that, because to me, I just feel like I'm always trying to climb out of the well. But but honestly, I'd say a lot of it has to do with the fact that I know my team trusts me. Um, and if anyone, like most people who want to do important and meaningful work, we are our own worst critics. So knowing the fact that I didn't want to disappoint myself, let alone the team, was a major factor in terms of a driving motivation. Um, Another aspect is learning how to use resources, knowing what my own skills and assets were. Uh, like you said, I literally didn't know anything. So learning the technologies was a major bottleneck for me. Learning about our CRMs and different types of communication methods across different, for example, Trello. Once I figured it out, it was great, but I hadn't seen project management boards like that. Slack is pretty easy to learn and understand, and that was for more the communication at in terms of like immediacy. Um, but oftentimes it had to do with preliminary research, background research, watching a handful of tutorials, getting familiar with it. The first thing I had to learn was WordPress itself. Like, how do I build a site? Everything said hello world and lorem ipsum, whatever, fake Latin stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, I did copy all that and put it into Google Translate. Not not much happened. I was like, particular technique still applies to even today, literally today. Today, I got a lot of more experience with gravity forms, having even though I did homework on it a couple months ago. and I started really using it a lot more and realizing, hey, this actually has a pretty low barrier of entry, but it's another example of how I would use one of our many, many, many tools to try to get up to speed. Another thing that was very difficult was knowing from the beginning that I wasn't working for just one company. I wasn't working for just Affiliate WP or Easy Digital Downloads. I was working for all of them. And we do have teammates that don't really do other than their job at one company, and they do it very, very well, obviously much deeper than the level that I would ever touch within that company. But to be aware of the infrastructure and the ecosystems of each one of them has been a gradual process. Yes, I had crash courses, and for example, EDD when I started, I think had like over 200 extensions, and now we're down to 120 something, 150 ish,
Probably.
roughly.
Sure.
And I am probably only familiar with a solid half of them. There are still a whole bunch that I know what they do, and I just know the bare minimum of what they do. And some of it's because they're not very widely used, and I don't have the opportunity to use them. And we have so much going on that I can't always just go randomly. Oh, I'm going to go study this random obscure thing that is used for one thing in one country. Why did we build it? Not sure. Who built it? Don't even know anymore.
Right.
But and try not to forget it. And so that's been my year in a nutshell. Has been a lot of that on a daily basis.
Sure.
Yeah,
Just the other day at WordCamp Jackson, you gave your first talk at
I
a
did.
WordCamp.
I did.
That was pretty cool. So
Yeah.
describe what the talk was about.
So my talk was almost everything I just said.
Okay.
It was called 0 to 100 WordPress in 1 year, my story. And essentially it talks, I spoke about my non-tech background, and I really wanted to reach out to those who are in similar situations as me in at the conference, and meaning that they may not necessarily be going into a tech related career, but the fact that they wanted to learn about WordPress, a very tech oriented concept for their own purposes, whether it be for their own of technology, languages. Just because you both speak English doesn't mean you know what they're talking about in terms of developers and people who are at the pro and high end level of WordPress. Um, and learning how to be the bridge between the beginner and the expert is where I situated myself. And I use that position to kind of fire at both ends of the bridge, for the experts, letting them know, hey, you can't always talk in gibberish. I know it makes sense to you, but not to the rest of us,
Mhm.
So it was sort of an unofficial um, discussion on how someone who is an expert would onboard someone who is not an expert. Just like, hey, pay attention that these are difficulties that they have. You may have had them too, but they were so long ago you don't even think about them anymore. And then for those who are on the other end of the bridge of they're the beginner, it's like, hey, be aware of these handful of things. This is how you get your mind in the right place. It's going to be difficult, but you're going to have a lot of little victories along the way. And those add up. And before you know it, you're going to be able to do things. It may seem daunting because there's so much to learn, but if you just tackle what you need to do first, you'll start taking care of all the necessities first, and you start building a little foundation for yourself in terms of your knowledge on how to even use WordPress.
Yeah.
So I got some feedback, and I guess it was pretty relatable to a lot of the people who were, more at the entry level of WordPress.
Right.
So I felt like it was a somewhat decent talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I picked it. a lot of us get to this point where it hits us, like, all right, it's my turn to turn around and try and help other people, similar to how I was helped when I got started.
Mhm.
And for me, I was doing this for a few years before I ever started to feel that way.
Sure.
And I've been trying to help other people ever since, in whatever way I can.
Sure.
And to be just like finishing up 1 year and already stepping up in front of groups and like saying, here's what I got to share, here's how I can encourage people who are going through what I did. That's pretty cool. That's pretty quick to already be passing knowledge along.
Yeah. Yeah. I I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I sometimes feel the need to step in when I guess this is how it started in terms of passing knowledge on was when I would notice that particular WordPress meetups where someone just getting into it would ask a question and everyone who answered gave great answers but also terrible answers. They answered the question but not in a manner that the person who asked the question could understand it in any which way.
Mm,
Um, so sometimes often I would jump in and try to break it down a little bit, make it a little more digestible, or use analogies to convey the concepts spot.
right.
And being able to identify that is probably why I was interested in helping so quickly. I was like, I know your pain. Let me
Yeah.
break it down for you. I was there last week. Yeah.
That's good. Been a good experience so far. Just participating in word camps. You've been to probably 6 by now, I would
Yeah,
guess.
I've been to 6 or so by
Yeah.
now. Interestingly, my very first one was WordCamp US,
All right.
and that was last December,
Hmm.
almost a year ago. And that really set the tone and probably the wrong way. They said, "Oh yeah, this is the biggest one," but no one told me that this was the biggest one by like 15, 20 fold.
Yeah,
And
it's up there.
and that I really like the small ones when they're under 100 people or just like 200 people. I mean, you start seeing the same faces in the industry again, but the locals who won't go more than a couple hours to attend a word camp, the connections you meet there, you meet some really cool people in those
Mm.
word camps, and it's nice because you get that intimate feeling of, hey, I spent a day with everyone here and I know at least half the people by their first name now.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mm.
And oftentimes gentlemen at Get Pantheon or Pantheon, the hosting company, and sure enough, I went to San Francisco and I went to the Pantheon offices and hung out there for a day and talked about music, met one of the co-founders and chit-chatted with him. It was excellent. It was excellent.
You've been working for some pretty recognizable brands in this.
So I thought it had to do with me working here, had to do with nepotism, and I was afraid that people would think of it that way. But as I've met people and learned that his reputation is so solid and how transparent and well respected he is by the decisions that he makes, it was pretty apparent that if people realized I worked for him and knew him before I, you know, before any of the WordPress even got into the picture, um, they were really okay with me and said he probably made a good decision, and that was very humbling to be seen that way. The other aspect was I had no idea Pippin is what he is in the WordPress space. I just thought he was just some skinny kid roommate who's good at some stuff or something.
or something.
Companies within our space. I didn't realize that the influence was as big as it is. I didn't realize that, so many people were fans of it, and some people who are very vocal about not liking it too. It shows it, it shows a lot of passion, even though like almost everybody is at least a fan of him, even if they don't use um, our products. But if someone really doesn't like it, it's not for any reason. It's like if they're gonna hate, well, we might be doing something right. Well, we'll just keep telling ourselves that.
Right.
um and not all of them are super high profile, but knowing that we trust each other, we have each other's back, in the sense of, even if you mess up, we still have your back. We're not going to throw you under the bus. We're going to get together and figure out how to fix it together. And that's how we really have our back. And we really have a lot of brilliant people, and a good handful of them are very influential in our space. Um, and it's definitely an honor to work with them. Uh, but in the very beginning, I didn't know that we had as high of a profile as we did, and I, on a couple occasions, came across some a little bit of attitude in terms of, how do you not know anything and you're working for them, kind of attitude.
Wow.
Yeah, that happened a couple times. They didn't vocally say it, but I got the vibe from it. And you know, I all I could say was, "Hey, you're running your own ship. You can do whatever you want. Like, I didn't do anything to you." It's like, you could have applied. You could have applied, but instead you have your own company. You have your own time. A couple times, crazy, and our community is so welcoming and open. Restaurant, and I get so much more enjoyment out of feeding friends and family. Like, yeah, I'll cook for myself for sure. And
Yeah.
I definitely like it. And I will practice the crap out of dishes. Like in 3 hours, I'll make the same dish like 4 times just to get it right.
Wow.
And just like give it to my neighbors. I'm like, sorry, I messed up. And they're like, it tastes great. I was like, no, I messed up too. So here you go. But I second or first or second day, he was like, okay, okay, you know what you're doing. And then when we went to the restaurant later on in the week, he let me order for him. So because I he didn't want to have to explain to the waiter what his how to make his food appropriate to his dietary restrictions. So I was able to convey to the rate to the waiter our Did you make the tortillas and grew the corn yourself in the backyard? Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably. Yeah, rent's expensive in this place, or like they use nice ingredients, whatever. If you can tell that it's expensive to operate their restaurant in that place and they've been there for decades, that also kind of says something.
All right.
That also kind of says something. But that doesn't apply to every place, because on if the establishment is in a nice, and not necessarily nice, but an expensive area.
Sure.
Like, you could be a hole in a wall in LA, but I know you're paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month just for rent there.
Yeah.
You know, if you have one bad month, you're gone, kind of thing.
Right.
And if you can handle that, then okay, you're probably. Four?
Maybe. Yeah.
I would say maybe hit up one of our guys who you haven't interviewed yet.
Yeah.
You know, if not, I also think that some other people in our space that you've met at WordCamps. Actually, you've got a lot of them. You've hit a lot of them. How about do a little Sandhills stint, and you get a couple of us for a couple episodes.
All right.
Until you get bored of us, and then you can go somewhere else.